Welcome everyone to Male Fuzz TV. I am Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about Gen V Season 2, Episode 7, the penultimate episode of the season, and it is called Hell Week. So spoilers for the episode as always. This is an interesting one to talk about. Some kind of mixed feelings, and some of them I think are kind of on the writing. Some of them are just because I kind of figured something out a while ago. And a lot of this episode built up to a reveal that I have been speaking about as if it's just known fact for the last 3 episodes now. And that does make this kind of interesting to delve into, because I think the key twist, right, that Cypher is actually just Godolkin and that the old man is the real person puppeting the character we've been seeing walking around, right? That's what this episode finally reveals. Maybe they gave us too much of a hint to that with the whole he doesn't have Gen V in his system, because this was the only real explanation that ultimately, assuming we're still obeying the rules of the boys, which is that every soup has compound V in their system, this was the explanation that made sense. So it did make for an intriguing episode, because, and not intriguing because the storytelling's super intriguing, but intriguing because are they going to pull off this being satisfying even though I've already figured out where it's going? And I feel like it's kind of 50-50. On the one hand, I do still like what it is. I like what it sets up for the finale. I still think it's a good idea. I still like the idea of the puppet, who we do see a little bit of the real person by the end of this episode, and the idea that he's been held a prisoner in his own body for however long it's been since Godolkin's been doing this. I did enjoy the performance of the actor playing Godolkin, who reminded me a little bit of Tom Link, actually. It's not him, but it reminded me, his smile reminded me a little bit of him, from the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, amongst other things. So I do like all that stuff still. I still like what this is set up and what it's doing. But I will say that the characters were so adamant right up until after everything goes down that this is Godolkin and he can help us with Cypher, because he'll want to get back at Cypher because Cypher's kept him prisoner. They still think it's two different people, and they think that all to the point where it's all a big trick, effectively, for Marie to heal Godolkin, right? And it's kind of that thing where she's sitting down to do it, like, you're kind of going, oh no, Marie, you're about to unleash the villain, you're about to give him everything he wants. You're about to create the big bad with your own hands, as it were. And I think that's a little bit... That part of it is frustrating when you already have figured out where it's going, because it kind of makes the characters feel a little bit... Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that they should completely be sure and figure it out or anything, but it does feel a little bit weird how oblivious they are until it's too late, that no one even thinks about it, no one even suggests it. And especially given that the key piece of information that led me to the conclusion that Godolkin was just puppeting Cypher and that person we've been seeing all season isn't the real villain, that the old man's the real villain, is that one key piece of evidence that he did not have Compound V. I keep doing that because of the name of the show. Compound V in his system. The characters know this. Marie knows this. So it feels a little bit frustrating that no one even floats the possibility that he himself is just a puppet. And it does make the build up to the moment happening a little bit frustrating, and kind of instead of getting the rush of excitement that you should be getting as it's clearly building up to a big plot point. And I do think that even if I hadn't figured it out, and even if tons of people are watching this who haven't figured it out or watching, I feel like you can tell they're about to pull the rug out a little bit. There's something off about it, because it's one, it's the penultimate episode, so they're obviously not going to win at the end of this one, so that's kind of a meta reason. But it just kind of feels like it's building to something where clearly this is not going to go as well as they think it is. Marie's plan, well, you understand the logic of it, there's no way this is just going to go through the way it's currently set up. So I think that's... it's that would be fine in and of itself, but I think I would feel that a little bit anyway, even if I didn't know exactly where it was going. But at least in that case, I would be still thinking, well, I never figured it out, so I can't blame the characters for not figuring it out. However, it feels like and not just me either. I'm not taking credit for this necessarily, because like I feel like anyone who's talking to each other about this show is had an idea in their head at some point in the middle of the season that this is where it was heading. So yeah, it's kind of it's tough to like be mad at it and critique it, because it set the things up and it paid off the things that it set up. However, because so much of this is about tricking our main characters who we're supposed to be rooting for into falling into a trap, if we feel like we could see the trap coming a mile off, it's a little frustrating when the characters aren't smart enough to at least try and avoid it. Like, maybe they figure it out a little bit too late, the damage is done, but like they try and mitigate it a little bit or something. There's that, right? I think that's the one big point to mention. I think the other big point that I want to kind of critique, although I can kind of see what they're going for here, is there's a big character moment in this episode for Marie and Annabeth, right? Where they've all raced back to campus in different groups to get to Marie and stop her from what she's doing. And the big reason they're doing this, other than the fact that they care about her and don't want her to like go into this alone, is because Annabeth has a vision, right? She dreams something very bad where Marie seems to die and kill a bunch of people. There's blood. It's all very kind of abstract. You see like a head hitting the floor, blood spilling. You don't get a good look at exactly what's happening, but there's definitely an implication of a lot of carnage and Marie's death. It could be misinterpreted, and obviously we're only seeing small fragments, but that's what she's got going. But when they get to her, and this is before they go in the building where they know Cypher and Godolkin are, and they still don't know it's the same person, but they're going into the building. They try and talk Marie out of it, and they say, hey, Annabeth saw something, and she's like, I saw this, you're going to die. This is how it's going to end. And they try and talk her out of it. And there's two big key things here. One is that Annabeth reveals that one of the first visions she ever got was actually of her parents' death. And that she, and this is kind of a nice reveal actually, I don't mind this on its own in a vacuum, that she has been living with guilt because she felt like she could have stopped what happened to their parents all this time. And it's actually kind of like a good bit of character development for her. I was saying last episode that like she herself as a character is kind of just like a MacGuffin for Marie's character at that point. This was actually a nice little bit of development for her, because it was like, oh, you have also been living with guilt about your parents' death your entire life, just like Marie has. And Marie's had this guilt because she felt like she physically did it. Annabeth feels that she has guilt because she could have stopped it. Now, obviously, if she stopped and thought about it, I get why she feels that way. I feel like anyone else would tell her that, hey, you were like, what, 6 years old, 7 years old? How were you to know this dream you were having was an actual vision that was going to come true? And even if you were convinced it was going to come true, no one's going to listen to you, right? You're too young. So it's not really her fault, but you get why she feels that way. You get why she feels that she should have done something. She should have yelled loud enough, screamed about it. Like, at least, even if she just changes the future by, like, causing enough of a ruckus that everyone has to stop and deal with her, that would maybe have still averted what happened, right? So, anyway, I like that detail. That's a good character bit. Marie, though, arguably then kinda goes a little bit villainous. I say villainous, like she goes a little bit over a line, and it's kind of like, I get that the writings maybe set this up because all episodes she's been chastising Kate. Kate keeps saying, "Fix me, heal me, and I can use my powers to help you. I can find Cypher when they were still looking for him, and go to Godolkin. I can do this, whatever." And she promises that she'll never use her powers on Marie or the rest of the group ever again, and that she's changed because she's seen what Vought does to people. She's seen it in the hospital. She's seen what they've been doing over the summer when she's been working for them. She has changed. She is never going to be that Kate that she was in season 1. And Marie is rightfully suspicious and doesn't want to trust her, right? And even when Polarity, and again, I thought this was a really good scene, Polarity kind of steps in and says, hey, why don't you fix her and she can use her powers? And he's like, the two things I like about this actually is, one, Polarity kind of sympathizes with her because he also understands being used by Vought and having regrets about what he's done for them. So even when Marie pulls out the big sort of emotional card, when she says, use your powers on us, and she lists all of the group and then eventually lands on Andre and says, hey, use your powers on Andre, and tricked him, Polarity still kind of like stands his ground and says, Like, it's not that simple. You know, if you want to blame anyone, blame me. I should have taken better care of him. I should have warned him about who fought where, and that's regret that I have to live with. There's a big theme of regret happening for a lot of the characters, clearly, as we're going through these plots. But I like that. I like that he kind of sticks up for Kate to a point, and Marie stands her ground and says no. So she's been kind of self-righteous about not trusting Kate. Like, she admits that, yeah, we saved Kate from the hospital, the prison. She deserved to be saved. We owed her that, but that does not mean that she deserves to have the power that she had, and that we can trust her with that power. Flash forward to this scene where they're all standing outside the building, and Marie is basically using her powers to stop Jordan from just physically apprehending her, and then ultimately uses her powers in the entire group that are there to stop her, right? Lifts them all up. Not her sister, but all of the soups that we're used to in the show. You know, the usual Emma, Sam, the regular crew. They all lift up, right? Marie lifts them all up. They're all in pain. And she turns to Kate and says, I'll fix you if you use your powers on them. To make them leave, like to keep them safe. Like she dresses it up as a noble thing. Like, I want to keep them safe and keep them away from this conflict. But that's what I want. And to be fair, and I like this, like, so there's things I like and don't like about this. I don't mind the idea that Marie is getting a little bit maybe too power mad to an extent. Not that I think she should ever go too far over the line, but the idea that Cypher's been whispering in her ear, you're meant to be, you're a god, you're above all these other people, and you should start acting like it. Like, she shows a little bit of that here, even though it's under the idea of like their own best interest. The idea that she wants to take their control away and ask Kate to use her powers on them for her benefit is a giant hypocritical move, especially after everything she said about Kate all episode. And I like this from a character writing perspective of like making her flawed and giving her something to redeem about. My critique really from Marie's side of this is maybe just that it feels a little bit too rushed. It feels a little bit too quick for me to really completely buy into it, especially after the speech that her sister just gave her about also having guilt about the parents, and her sister genuinely try to save her life here. I thought that was a really good moment, and it should have been the sort of thing that could have convinced her. But the writers didn't do that. The writers had Marie still want to go in and fight the rest of them, or at least try and shoo them away to go and do the thing she wants to do. And of course, she's going to feel super guilty about this because she's just went and super powered up the main villain. She's given him all he wants. And now he's on his reign of terror at the end of the episode. So I'm a little conflicted about this moment. I think there's like good parts to it. And the other good part to it that is unequivocally fantastic is Kate saying no, right? Just to make that clear. When Kate is asked and she's offered her powers back to be fixed, right? And Marie at this point in the episode is fixed polarity, right? Andre's dad is now back to 100% health because Marie was able to fix him. And it's further evidence that she can do this now. She's getting better at it. She knows how to do it. It takes a lot out of her. Everyone in the vicinity gets a nosebleed, but she's able to do it. And Kate, despite having wanted this all episode, says no. I actually think that's a great character moment for Kate. So, I think that's a good thing for her going forward. It makes us see her a bit more heroic, and it makes us see Marie as a little bit less noble, right? And I used villainous earlier. Villainous wasn't the right word. Like, she's not doing anything for bad reasons here, but it definitely is a little bit less likable coming from Marie in this moment. And I tend to find her very likable as a character. So this moment stood out considerably for her doing this and trying to take everyone else's choice away from them. It felt hypocritical. And it's something that I do hope is addressed. It's funny because back at the start of the season, in one of the things that I didn't like as much right at the start was Jordan being pissed at Marie. It felt a little bit heavy-handed until they patched things up, which admittedly didn't take too long. But for that one episode and a half where that was a thing, I wasn't super into it. I think after this, though, I am into Jordan being pissed at Marie. I think this is like I think to us, the audience, we have just witnessed Marie do something that they're allowed to be mad about. They're allowed to be pissed at her for this, and there's potentially good character drama to come from that, right? If they use it properly, there's a lot of meat there to really get into about why and how she just stepped over a line, and why that was her acting like she can do what she wants because she has more power, when she should be a hero, and a hero wouldn't do that no matter how much power they have, which is, That's the problem we have with freaking Homelander, is that he thinks he's like the most powerful being on Earth. He thinks he's God. He thinks he can do anything without any comeuppance, without anyone standing in his way. And he uses it, this is what makes him different from Superman. Superman, the whole idea is that he's that powerful, but he chooses not to use it in bad ways. He chooses to be kind, to be helpful, to cherish everyone around him. There's a noble quality which makes him a hero, right? The super part might have been there anyway, but the hero part is something that's character driven. It's not powers driven. Anyway, so, there's a lot of things to like in this scene, right? I kind of came into that scene almost as if I wanted to complain about it, and as I'm talking about it, there's actually a lot more positives than there are negatives. I guess it just felt a little bit rushed for Marie to jump to this like extreme of doing this bad thing. It felt a little bit unearned in that sense, but I do like the potential fallout from it, and I like a lot of the other characters in the scene. I think Annabeth is definitely more interesting after this scene. I think Kate has a great moment of refusing to do it and saying, no, I said I wouldn't use my powers on them, even if that's the price of getting them back. It makes her more likable and makes me want to trust her a little bit more as a character, so that's good stuff. And it's worth mentioning, they all still run into the building to try and help Marie in various ways. Some of them try and take on Cypher, who makes them fight each other. Greg's here, of course, the new Emma love interest, which obviously Sam has some issues with earlier on. There's a great moment where Emma's talking to Greg, and when Emma turns around and looks at Sam, he's standing there with this guy on a leash in a nappy, diaper for the Americans, and that visual really got me. Like, I liked his little bit of jealousy when they were talking about the DMs last episode. It was a nice little beat. Because I think what was missing for Sam's story in the first half of the season is that he was acting the way Sam does, but there wasn't anything charming or funny about it. This episode and last episode, it introduced a little bit of humor and also a little bit of humanity to it as well. Because he even admits to Emma that he's like, because she blows up at him at one point and says, hey, if I did want to date Greg, it would be none of your business. That's not how she said it. She involved some finger banging, I believe, but she got really crud with it because she's Emma. But he kind of admits, look, this is new to me. I don't know how to deal with jealousy. I don't want to, it feels like he's trying to address what he's feeling and what he's going through. But it is kind of funny when it's innocent enough when he's giving into the jealousy a little bit, because you get a little bit of comedy out of it. And again, man in nappy standing next to him just makes it like a really weird visual. And the great thing about that guy in the nappy is that because he's been used for nothing but comic relief the entire episode, it makes his ending really, really dark and sad at the end of the episode. So more on that in a minute. But yeah, we get the big fight with Cypher puppeting the various characters against Polarity. And they ultimately do win, but it's a decent little action sequence. Whilst Marie goes downstairs, and this is the part that's kind of frustrating when you've already figured out where it's going, because Marie's like, oh, are you Godolkin? Can you help us with Cypher? And he's like nodding his head as best as he can and all the rest of it. But they go down to find Marie, they get her out of here. I think it's Kate and Emma. I think it may be Kate who initially realizes once Godolkin gets up and starts being like, oh, I can touch again, the pain is gone, oh, I can't believe it, you did it, Marie. Kate's the one that kind of clocks it, like, what's going on here. And because he's still in the moment of, like, figuring himself out, I guess they're able to get away. Although the way he smiles at Kate as she's leaving implies to me that he's kind of just letting them go because it doesn't matter to him. Like, he can come and get any of those characters that he wants. One of the things that was, introduced last episode is that his whole plan is to basically kill all of the supes that he thinks are useless. Like, all the ones that have powers that he doesn't think are actually godlike. Like, all the ones who have shitty powers, he's just going to cull them. The Great Culling, he calls it. So you've got him wanting to commit genocide, basically, of effectively his own kind. So there's all sorts of wild politics and master race stuff going on there with that idea. The idea that supes are, effectively, in terms of their powers, supes are in this show, in this universe, are very, very diverse, right? Only, like, it's actually kind of rare for two supes to meet each other and find out they have the same powers, right? Marie kind of had it with Newman, but, like, maybe it wasn't the exact same, because I don't know if Newman even had the potential to do what Marie's doing now with the healing people and whatnot. But, like, it feels like it's so diverse, and it's like, he's making just a line, like an arbitrary line. Like, everyone below this line of power level can just die, and it feels dark, but it feels like they're exploring some big themes. which is sadly still super relevant today. You know, I won't get into it. I don't want to turn the video into a political conversation, but you know, it's one of the things that I said back at the start of the show is that sometimes the world's gotten worse in some ways, so the satire element's not as funny as it was. Not because the writing's any worse with it, but just because it's less something you want to hear about or want to laugh about as much in recent years or two gone past. That was a weird sentence. It's because I'm dipping into serious stuff here, so I'm fumbling my words, trying to speak around it carefully. Anyway, yeah, so I like the ending of this episode, right? I like this idea that Godolkin's this real big bad, and he goes to the guy with the nappy and says, "What's your power again?" And he's like, "Oh, I can turn my feet into hands." And he's like, "Oh, that's pathetic. Let's stop that right now," and makes him choke himself with his own leash until he dies. And then he walks off, but he's got a blanket around him and he just walks off into the campus like, who's next kind of thing. So they've unleashed this great and powerful evil. What's so funny about this is that if it wasn't for the fact that we're going into The Boys season 5 after this season, I would be convinced this is like set up for like I would think that Godolkin's going to be sticking around and he'll be the main villain for the entire next season of Gen V. That would be my assumption if it was on its own. But because we're getting into the final season of The Boys before we come back into Gen V, it feels weird for that unless something kind of keeps him off the table for a little while or keeps him separate from everything. So I'm kind of thinking they might actually just kill him by the end of the next episode now, which would almost be a bit of a shame because it feels like a really big, you know, arch nemesis super villain has been created here. So it's interesting to see what they do with it. I now get into the finale, but I mean, I do love conceptually what Godolkin is and what he's doing. Like, I think it's a very good villainous side. Like, I think I like him as a villain more than like the villains from the first season, certainly. But I think the first season did have better pacing, better structure, and it's entirely possible some of those issues, like something as simple as like we spent last episode getting to this bunker with Edgar and that, but then 5 minutes into this episode they've all left that bunker, and it's it's kind of like an in and out kind of thing, and we're already gone. It's already been left behind. And that kind of feels a little bit weird and rushed as well. That was something from early in the episode that stuck out to me. It is possible that some of these issues are because they had to rewrite the season, right? Because they lost a cast member and they had to kind of really rejumble things. And maybe there's some knock-on effect. But I don't want to just give excuses for writing faults. But, they did find themselves in a hard position where the season was already, I think, written, or at least partially written, when they had to kind of pivot and get things done by a certain time, assuming they had deadlines. I don't really know if they did. It is Amazon after all, but I know it's like I still like a lot of things in this episode, and I like a lot of what this season is built to. It's just a little bit messier in some respects, particularly in this back half. Like I think episodes like 4 and 5 were really, really great. And then 6 and 7 have been a little bit like, had good things in them and good moments and funny moments and good character moments, but they've definitely felt a bit messier in terms of their pacing and structure. So it is interesting. And part of it almost feels like maybe they could have used another episode or two, like maybe give them 10 episodes for the season to let them flesh a few of these things out. Maybe the moment with Marie doing something a little bit darker and try to take the choice away from her friends, which is inherently a bad thing. Maybe if they'd built that up a little bit over an extra episode, maybe that would have landed a little bit better for me. But it's tough to say. Obviously I think the cast are all doing a pretty good job. Like, and there are moments of humor here. A lot of it comes from the Sam and Greg stuff specifically. But I think they've built to a compelling villain here in Godolkin. It's just a shame the characters had to be a little bit dumb for him to like get away with what he was doing up until this point. Like maybe they just had a bit too much information to make it feel like they shouldn't have figured it out, kind of thing. So I don't know. It is what it is. I still think there's a lot to like here, but definitely a little bit in the messier side. And I really do stand by a lot of the character beats and like moments and the potential fallout from the decisions that have been made. I do think could be quite good. It just feels like, I mean, maybe even the this plot advancement should have happened earlier. Perhaps maybe this should have been like an end of episode 5 thing, so we could have had more time to one, it would have happened quicker, so they maybe had less time to like figure out what was really going on, so they wouldn't have seemed as dumb. And then you'd have more time with Godolkin after the fact to kind of really build up what we're doing in the last episode. Again, I've not seen the last episode yet, so who knows if that'll feel rushed or if it feels just right. But that said, though, that would make the moment. But assuming you still had that moment of Marie making the kind of the villainous choice, that might have felt even worse if it had been earlier. So, tough to juggle these things, but that's why writing is hard. And as much as I can critique it, it doesn't mean I always have an easy solution, which is when you can sympathize with them a little bit. When you do have an easy solution, or at least it feels like you do, that's when you start getting a little bit frustrated. Like, why are these people being paid? But I don't feel that way with this show. Anyway, that is my thoughts on episode 7 of Gen V season 2. Let me know what you thought of this one in the comments. You can like, subscribe, all that usual stuff. Helps out a bunch if you can. And of course, if you want to support the show and the channel and the movie channel as well, where all the movie podcasts live, you can do that over at Patreon, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, or via YouTube membership. Thanks to everyone who already does support everything. It's been a pleasure. I'll see you guys next time. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?